All right, guys. Hey, welcome in. Chat with Gunner podcast coming to you live right here from LinkedIn today. Got a very special guest. You guys have been excited about it. I've had many comments about it, direct messages, and a lot of the guys that run podcasts as well and logistics have been like, hey, guys, can y'all not do that show while we're doing ours? I was like, we'll figure it out. Andrew Sobko, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing very well. Hey, thanks for coming on to the show. Congratulations for CDL 1000, getting on the Inc. 5000 list. And being number 3. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So I don't know much about you. I just want to jump into it. I've been doing a little bit of research, and it's kind of hard throughout the internet to figure out what's going on. But like, you was an executive at Uber Freight. Is that correct?
No, we do have a lot of executives from Uber Freight working for us.
Okay.
Yeah, former executives, but no, I never worked for Uber Freight.
Okay, so because it didn't say that on your LinkedIn profile, so I was a little confused. But obviously, you've been at CDL. You're the founder of CDL 1000. Just kind of talk a little bit about how you got into logistics and where CDL came from.
Sure. So initially, I got into logistics. I was like super young. I started my first company. I was about 18 years old. And so over time, spent a couple of years in logistics industry. About 6-7 years ago, I discovered DRAYAGE. And it totally blew my mind how inefficient it was. And I had some sort of understanding how truckload business operates. I think I had a pretty well understanding. And it's pretty efficient, even that you can still come up with some different kind of backhauls, be more efficient, reduce empty miles, and everything else. But DRAYAGE completely blew my mind how inefficient it was. Like, those street turns where you can match import and export containers. So I started thinking like, look, imagine somebody can automate the process. Imagine somebody can digitalize this kind of very old school, relationship-driven type of niche in logistics industry. Like 3PL broker, there's not that many like nationwide 3PLs in the DRAYAGE space as of yet. So end of 2018, we started CDL, and actually we acquired a small, tiny company, and straight focus was on DRAYAGE. And recently, as you guys could probably have seen, DRAYAGE for the past 2 years became like the biggest kind of talks in the supply chain, the biggest problem of the supply chain. And I personally think it's like the most complicated piece of the supply chain in general. So being extremely successful in it, and we at this moment we manage DRAYAGE for probably 30 out of top Fortune 100 customers. So we have some of the biggest retailers we manage DRAYAGE for, and some very well-known customers with very big volumes of freight.
Wow. So 2018 comes around, and you just kind of figured this whole DRAYAGE game out. When I started hearing about DRAYAGE, it was probably when COVID happened, when the backlogs of containers, and that's when it nationally went mainstream. But companies locally in town that I knew of, Steam Logistics, they were probably the number one in town as far as like kind of going after the DRAYAGE side of it. What made you find the aspect that DRAYAGE was so inefficient? And how did you think that your truckload knowledge would fix that problem?
So just so you understand, so like 99% of the modes in the DRAYAGE industry, you basically, let's say it's import containers. And you import and you have to return containers, back to the ports. And 99% of the time, you return empty containers back to the port. So let's give a couple data points. So let's say you pull containers out of Los Angeles port, and you actually have deliveries to Phoenix, Arizona, or Vegas, which is like, let's say 300 miles runs. 99% of the time, carriers will basically drive back empty, and they constantly always getting paid for their own trip. So just that started kind of like stuck in my head. And it was like, wow, it's so inefficient. Like, imagine you can just put some partials from like over the road industry as a backhaul into those containers, because either way, you're going back to the port. You can basically, improve and be a lot more efficient. And over time, we discovered the term called street turn. So street turn is basically when you match import and export containers. Totally different customers. It could be like, you have to make sure that it's the same steamship line that owns a container. So early in 2019, we started heavily focusing on, matching street turns, basically import and export containers. You're getting paid from both clients on the round trip. So basically getting like double paid. And over time, the idea was to continue driving prices, reducing prices down for both parties, for importers and for the exporters, which are completely two different customers. And we got to the point that within like 4 to 5 months focusing just on this particular issue, we started street turning about 80% of our import containers, which was which just completely blew my mind. In 2018, 2019, DRAYAGE was not that popular. Volumes were very low, and it was not as sexy as it is right now to be in DRAYAGE. So it was pretty difficult to find customers, but we were figuring this out, and our our partner carriers and drivers were extremely happy when we were matching those street containers, and that's how we started.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you're able to cut down the cost on both ends, but you're probably making still a decent margin because you have the round trip, right? That's the game in logistics. If you can get round trip money on something, you're making money no matter what.
Yeah.
To be able to pull that from two different sides of the spectrum, going import and export with two different customers, it's really smart, man.
Yeah.
Really smart.
And kind of over time, we've been strategizing and thinking about it. So DRAYAGE, for many years, it was kind of like owned by local and regional carriers. So let's say Los Angeles ports, so let's say Walmart or Target, they try to outsource, let's say, all of their drayage to something like 3PL or trucking company. There are not that many large players. They have solution out of many different ports and rail yards. So I started thinking about it, and we were trying to figure out the solution for those clients. How can we deliver service for them, excellent service, nationwide, which is pretty difficult to do. It's not typical, brokerage. It's a little bit more complex. And in order to be successful, we realized, okay, we have to establish pools of chassis and have to build infrastructure out of those biggest ports and rail yards in order to be successful. So we can, let's say, have partnership with different yards and cranes, so we can maybe ground some containers, have access to private chassis. And that was a big part of our success in the drayage field.
So here's a question. We did some FEMA work when I was at my previous company, and the way we was able to kind of maximize that, the most efficient way was renting a bunch of trailers for them. That way we just power only stuff.
Yeah.
Did you guys buy chassis, buy containers and stuff like that? Or buy chassis and rent them? Or did you just kind of use broker partners or other?
We acquired a lot of chassis. We leased a lot of chassis. There are many instances where we actually acquired chassis and we leased it back to some of the largest retailers. I'm not going to mention any names, but some of the biggest retail companies in the country. And that was another kind of big piece of being kind of successful to execute on those large volume projects.
So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, and the ones that you, I guess, were renting, were you just kind of storing them around that area? Because when you do drayage, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you do drayage, you go and you can get like a trailer pool or a chassis pool from the port, or you can have your own. So would you kind of just store them around and say, hey, let's power only this with the brokerage?
Yeah. So very often there are chassis pools available at the different ports and rail yards. But for the past 2 years, it became like a massive shortage of chassis. So for you to be successful, you have to have access to private chassis. And so we kind of like were a little bit ahead of the game. We realized that before it became a big madness, the whole supply chain madness.
Sure.
And so we had access to those chassis in the past. And we were just able to execute on very large volume projects. And kind of our philosophy as in the industry, especially like why we've been successful and growing like crazy for the past 2 years, we believe that if we solve the biggest supply chain challenges for our customers, like anything else will follow. So I'm talking about truckload business. We're still pretty big in the truckload world. We have a lot of truckload business, but we always get in and build a relationship with our customers, which are most of our customers are Fortune 500 companies. We build a relationship on the drayage side, and then we slowly get into truckload business. And when we execute excellently on the massive projects on the drayage, then truckload is given. That's our philosophy.
Well, hey, that's a smart philosophy, because the easiest way to get in somebody's good side is to solve their biggest pain point. And if their biggest pain point is importing and exporting with the drayage aspect of it, that's genius. It really is, because the 15,000 other brokers out there are calling right now just trying to get their easy freight, their truckload freight, right? You're going to have to say, give me your hardest stuff, and then we'll worry about the other stuff later. Smart, man. It's really smart. So now I guess I'm assuming since you got into... Can you hear me now? Good?
Yeah, hold on. Sorry.
You're good, man. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Hey, that's the live problems of going live. No big deal. So question for you. When you rented all these or acquired all these chassis prior to 2020, not knowing what was about to happen, I'm assuming that you guys not only were able to rent these to the major customers that you had, the major retailers, but probably to other major trucking companies and other brokerages as well. Did you utilize that?
Yeah. So even prior to 2020, we were already handling, DRAYAGE for big Fortune 100 clients in the past. So we're just kind of focusing on, keep expanding. So we're building up infrastructure prior to that. And I have to give some credit. We have, pretty big AI team in-house, and we're always trying to kind of predict capacity and predict, the volumes of containers coming into the country. So we had like some tips from our AI team, like a little bit ahead of the game, like in a few months ahead, what potentially could happen. And so we were able to strike some deals on the chassis side prior to that.
Smart. So with artificial intelligence, AI, how important would you say that is for transportation moving forward?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up again.
I'm sorry. So with artificial intelligence, AI, how important would you say that is for transportation moving forward?
So, I've gave, a couple different interviews in the past, and I'm a big believer in technology. And I've said in the past that logistics companies must embrace technology and AI, or eventually they'll die. And I had a lot of people that kind of disagreed with me on that point, but I'm a big believer in tech, in AI. So that just kind of like our company, like, my personal opinion, our company, and that's how we just operate. But I believe eventually companies that just can't embrace technology will die.
No, I agree with you. I think that you got to be willing to change. Change is inevitable. And if you're not willing to change, you will die. With that also being said, technology, you got the blockchain. As far as the blockchain goes, do you see the blockchain coming into logistics as well? I just have a feeling you might know something about it.
Correct. I mean, we are not that big in the blockchain as of yet. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, but at this moment, we were not as big on operating on the blockchain as of yet.
Okay. Now let's speak to like business building a little bit. Get away from logistics. How have you been able to build your business in logistics? Not necessarily about like chassis and doing the work. I'm talking about people building. How have you been able to build the people in your company?
So we started extremely slow. So like in 2018, we probably had about 5 people in our team, and now we are our headcount is like over 250 employees. So people building is extremely important. We are even that as we are super kind of tech driven company, but at the end of the day, it's all about the sales, right? So we always were looking for some aggressive individuals, like with experience and without experience. We were able to train them on the industry. A lot of our folks came from different industries, and we were able to train them on DRAYAGE and explain them how complicated it is. And over time, they kind of learned. And now it's definitely one of kind of the most important pieces of the company. It's all about the relationships and the people that you have.
Do you have a training department that trains your staff, or was it like in the beginning, were you hands-on with everybody? Like explain that whole process.
So at the beginning, I would say like back again, coming and having some clear understanding about, truckload business, I started seeing DRAYAGE as a kind of complicated power-only moves. That's it. So usually historically 3PLs stayed away from DRAYAGE because they always were scared of it and it was like too complicated for them. And I see it's just a little bit complicated power-only moves. So that's how I was explaining to some people from the industry that never touched DRAYAGE in the past. And some people just were, new to the industry. Just start thinking about like, dropping hooks, like a little bit complicated, dropping hooks type of accounts that every day you move different chassis in different container, and next day you have a different one. It's always a round trip, which is extremely important. Your drivers can always basically most of the time can come home every night. So that's, I would say, kind of like I'm trying to always simplify the whole kind of
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So a little bit about your backstory. Where are you from, man? Are you from the States, or where exactly are you from?
So I was born in Ukraine. I moved to the States. I was about 16 years old, and that's kind of my story. And how I got into the logistics industry, that's actually a very cool story. So I used to live in California, and I had a couple of friends in Chicago, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you come to Chicago?" So through some of mutual friends, I was offered a free ride to Chicago with a truck driver. I was young, had no idea about the logistics industry. I was confident that I'm getting into finance. I was very passionate about the stock market and everything else. And so I took a ride with him. We spent like about 5 days in the truck. He explained to me, it was owner operator, explained to me how the industry works, how it operates, how sometimes like how prices are changing, like sometimes every hour. You go to a different region, let's say you book a freight before noon, you get one price, and sometimes afternoon it's completely different price. You can negotiate better. So it completely blew my mind. And that's how I got into the industry. I became extremely interested in it, very passionate about it. And that's how I got into the industry.
So did you go work for another brokerage or another transportation company, or did you just start one up off the rip?
No, I worked for about a year for like 2 different transportation companies. And then like at the age of 18, just decided to start my own. I kind of like knew nothing about the industry, took a huge risk, made millions of mistakes. I'm not joking, probably more than 1 million mistakes, and learned a lot. I'm still young and I'm not complaining, but just kind of dedicated and passionate about always trying to find some pain points and try to solve it.
Yeah, I mean, you're a professional problem solver, right? I mean, that's the guys that are usually the most successful in this industry,
Yeah.
Guys that are, always trying to innovate and find the next way to solve somebody's problem, make themselves money, save them a little bit of money, and that's how you build relationships. That's cool, man. Dude,
Yeah.
It's really cool that you were able to get in a ride with a truck driver for free all the way to Chicago, and now look at you. Now you're president and founder of a trucking company. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a crazy story, but that's what it is.
So talk to me about some other things, like kind of outside of work. Hobbies wise, what do you do? Like, what makes you have a little bit of fun? Are you just all work, no play, or do you like to work and go do other things?
You're breaking up again. So most of the time, I work for many years, about 100 hours a week. Boxing. I love boxing. I'm a big fan of boxing. I'm a big fan of Formula One. I've been a fan of Formula One for many years. And that's kind of what I do. I love, watching boxing, participating in some different kind of boxing events. Back in the days, I was helping promote some different shows in the boxing industry. It was just my personal hobby. And yeah, but now I'm getting more into like Formula One. Actually, chairman of our company of CDL 1000, Steve Wasserman, he's also a principal and one of the owners of Formula One McLaren team. And he became a chairman of CDL 1000 recently. So that's been a very interesting journey, and keep getting some interesting inside stories on F1. So that's actually very cool in my mind.
Yeah, no, it is. So I'm a big sports card fan. I'm big into that whole deal. Formula One is huge right now in sports cards. Like that's the top sports cards you want to get into is Formula One cards from like Pinelli or whatever. So you should look into those. But the boxing, big boxing fan. I love combat sports. I'm a UFC fan a little bit more than boxing. So I got a boxing question for you though. Jake Paul, you got guys like him jumping into boxing. He's an influencer. I'm sure you've heard of if you're a boxing fan. What do you think about that aspect of boxing next to like a Canelo, who's obviously one of the best in the world?
Yeah.
So do you like the Jake Pauls coming in and having entertaining fights and bringing eyeballs?
So first of all, I got to know pretty well Canelo, and actually one of my boxing glasses actually signed by him.
No way. That's sweet.
We have a lot of mutual friends. My opinion on Jake Paul is actually he's doing a good thing for the boxing. He's bringing like young people that were never interested in the boxing in general. So he's attracting a lot of young, individuals, into the boxing industry. So I actually like it. I think it's beneficial. A lot of people hate this idea, and my personal opinion, I kind of grew up watching boxing since I was like probably 3 or 4 years old. My dad was, a boxer, so I think he's becoming a pretty good boxer too. He's probably not the best. He's not at Canelo level, but he's learning. He's working extremely hard. Actually, with Jake Paul, we have some mutual friends. Actually, one of his personal mentors, Mark Roberts, he was just here in my office. He was telling me like some cool stories with Jake Paul. So we have also a bunch of mutual friends. So I think he's doing a great thing for the business.
No, I agree. At the beginning, I was kind of skeptical, but then I was like, man, these guys are balling. I mean, their influence level's awesome. Their content's great. He's actually putting millions of dollars into his training. He's got some of the best trainers you can get in boxing. I mean, he's all in. I mean, you got to give it to him. You know, it's tough. Let's go. Who's your favorite boxer?
Not just because I'm Ukrainian, but I'm a big fan of Usyk, who's fighting with Anthony Joshua this weekend.
Heavyweights. Let's go.
I was actually a co-promoter on one of his shows in Chicago back in 2019. So we were friends, and so Usyk is one of my favorite boxers. I'm a big fan of Lomachenko. I'm a fan of Canelo. So I would say those. I have top three. It's Usyk, Canelo, and Lomachenko.
Okay, so now you're blowing. So you're promoting boxing now. You're friends with like the people I'm asking you questions about. So that's pretty cool. How many boxing fights did you promote?
I had about maybe 5 kind of bigger type of shows in the past. I'm staying out of it. It's too complicated, too stressful. It's not as great as it sounds. It's probably you're getting more stress in boxing than you're getting in the trucking industry. So I'm finding kind of it's more enjoyable just to get the best seats and just watch the biggest shows. And so it's more enjoyable just to watch boxing when you're not part of the promotion team. Say this way.
Yeah. So I'm a big UFC fan. So me and my fiance, we've been to probably 5 UFC events since a couple years ago, or 3 years ago. But those are it's hard to describe to people the environment and the atmosphere when people are actually punching people in the face with leather. You can watch it on TV and yeah, it's cool. But if you're in 5 rows away from ringside and you hear it, it's a lot different. It's like being in Gladiators.
Absolutely. Oh, it's very emotional. So I love it. I love UFC. I love boxing. And
so you do love UFC too?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, but so like part of my kind of boxing business, I became and got to know very well Roy Jones Jr., who's a very close friend with Dana White. So I was fortunate. Like one time I was introduced to Dana White by Roy Jones Jr. So
cool.
Yeah, so it was very cool. He's a cool guy and very cool guy, and both of them are great and historical. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of everybody. The grind that guys like that have, Dana White and UFC promoting the way he's been able to build that business, Vince McMahon and WWE. I'm a big pro wrestling fan as well, but he's a great promoter. I mean, guys like that are just so inspirational, and they work like you hundreds of hours a week. A lot of these people want to figure out, how do you make money in 4 hours in a week? Well, you can go sell a book called 4 Hour Work Week, but you're not going to really make money unless you're working hundreds of hours a week. That's bottom line. That's how it goes. So one of the questions I like to ask everybody before we get off here is, if you could give somebody young, somebody coming into the industry, one tip right now to help them out, get started, what would you tell them to do? So
one of my personal biggest breakthroughs in the logistics industry was, and I actually had this advice. It was like to stay asset light. And as you guys can probably seen in the past, like all the most successful new companies like Airbnb, Uber, they're all asset light. They build these kind of marketplaces that are not that asset kind of like heavy driven. So that's just kind of my personal opinion. Stay asset light as much as you can, and just keep solving problems. We keep as big as this industry is, and as many of those massive billion-dollar players in it. We always finding some innovative problems that we can solve with some innovation. I'm not talking only about technology. I'm talking just about different kind of processes. Like when this COVID started happening, like one of the cool things we did, was actually still doing it for one of the largest retailers. We actually started replacing railroad. We started actually moving containers on the flatbeds out of Los Angeles port. So instead of like client waiting like 2-3 weeks, on the rail and deliver their containers on rail from the West Coast to the East Coast, we just started putting the flatbeds and delivering in 3 to 4 days. So that's like one of the innovative outside the box ideas. Was not done typically in the past, and we built another big business on that. So constantly try to find different innovative ideas. We right now announced a new service offering, and we basically pitched it to 5 of our clients, and 5 of them signed up. It's a demerge as a service. SaaS kind of business models are super hot now. I'm not saying that there's a bunch of new players came up on the SaaS side in the industry, but we start offering this demerge as a service. We basically pay late fees to the ports of demurrages or rail yards on behalf of the largest clients. And we're just trying to make the whole process streamlined, make it faster, typically, for Walmarts of the world, for them to get some fee approved by the controller, it takes 2 days. So they accrue an additional hundreds of thousands, fees. So you're basically just trying to always come up with what the easiest and simplest way to do it, and just constantly building business and fighting some different kind of pain points in the industry. So there's many of them. There's many of those kind of pain points that you can find, and just keep focusing on it.
Dude, I love it. Well, Andrew, hey man, I know you're busy. Thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation. Didn't know we was gonna go boxing and UFC, but we could talk that all day. So maybe that's another podcast for another time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, hey man, if you're ever in Chattanooga, come hit me up. I'll get you dinner. If I'm ever in Chicago, I'll hit you up. Is that cool?
Sure, cool. Thank you.
All right, brother. We'll see you later, man. Hey guys, that was great. Andrew Sobko right there in the building. It was really cool. Didn't know we was going to cover all that stuff, but hey man, we did. It's not just freight around here. It's whatever we want to talk about. It's fun. Hey, I want you guys to go check out a couple of my buddies. Trey Griggs and the Standing Out podcast. He's doing that pretty much every day. I believe that's at 11:30 a.m. You guys, please go check that out. Matthew Leffler with the Armchair Attorney. Check that out on Fridays. It's going to be 1 p.m. Central Time. And then you got the Freight Coach, Chris Jolly. He's coming to you live pretty much every morning, giving you those tips, giving you that advice. So please hit him up as well. Guys, subscribe to this. Go to the YouTube channel. We're pushing 2,200 subscribers. So let's keep pushing that up. Keep pushing the views up. Keep coming around, and I'll keep bringing you some ballers from the freight game. We'll see you later. Bye.